We're here with some more Kurzgesagt. Today we're really late on this one, but the internet is worse than ever. I agree. I am an internet network engineer. That's what I do for a living. I've also done all sorts of things for ISPs, ranging from strategy to budgeting to planning, etc., etc. So I'm very familiar with this topic, and I can't wait to hear their thoughts on it and provide my input because I have a lot to say on the subject. Let's get right in.
In 2022, nearly half of Americans expected a civil war in the next few years. 1 in 5 now believes political violence is justified. And it's not just the US, but around the world.
That's the biggest, one of the scariest, I should say. It's one of the scariest facts that I've heard in a long time. 1 in 5 Americans, 20% of us, believe that political violence is justified. Think about that for just a second. Let's really let that one sink in, because that one, that's scary. It's America, right? The land of the free. Everyone's free to believe what they want, unless it opposes with what I think. That's me being sarcastic. But a lot of people actually think that way. And it's very scary. It's very scary.
People increasingly see themselves as part of opposing teams. There are many different reasons for this.
It's so true.
But one gets blamed a lot: social media.
Now, I'm going to provide some thoughts on this before they get into it, because I don't want my thoughts to be influenced by what they're going to say yet. That'll be for the follow-up. Social media certainly contributes to it. It's the spread of information. It's the anonymity that you get by being online. It's the fact that you're not face-to-face with someone, so that dehumanizes them. But it also spreads information faster. Notice I said information. It doesn't necessarily mean true information. It could be false information, but it spreads information faster. So lies can go as fast as truths. And especially in today's age, with AI coming up on the rise, it's increasingly harder and harder to sift out fact from fiction. And a lot of people struggle with that, especially, and I hate to say this, but especially the older generations, where technology is a very new thing to them. A lot of younger people struggle with it too. I'm not saying it's just them, but I'd say heavier percentage-wise for sure. And how do you tell nowadays? It's hard. It's really hard. And a lot of people are falling for misinformation. And that's what's really contributing to it.
Social media divides us, makes us more extreme and less empathetic. It riles us up or sucks us into doom scrolling, making us stressed and depressed. It feels like we need to touch grass and escape to the real world. New research shows that we might have largely misinterpreted why this is the case. It turns out that the social media internet may uniquely undermine the way our brains work, but not in the way you think.
Well, it's specifically designed to grab and keep your attention. Like when you look at an application like YouTube, for instance, YouTube has algorithms. They put so much into these algorithms that are specifically designed to know you, know your habits, know your wants, your likes, your hopes, your dreams, your fears, knows everything about you. And it's specifically designed to target you with things that you're going to be interested in. Why? Why is that? Because they want you to use the app more. Because they want to advertise to you more accurately. So that way there's a higher click-through rate on ads. So that way YouTube can make more money. And the video creators. But that's why they want that, right? It's money-based because you're paying for a subscription to YouTube. You're just not paying with money. You're paying with it with your personal information, getting targeted advertisements to you. That's how you pay. And that's why. So they are very specifically designed to keep you engaged.
The myth of the filter bubble. You've probably heard about online filter bubbles. Algorithms give you exactly what you want or what they think you want. You only see information that shows you opinions that agree with yours, while dissenting opinions or information are filtered out. Since
A
you
lot
only
of
see
places
content
do that.
close to your worldview, more extreme and toxic opinions suddenly seem less extreme. You're trapped in a radicalizing filter bubble, and your view of the world becomes narrower and more extreme. But is that true? Extreme filter bubbles
I would
seem
say
be
to an
rather rare.
extent. I would say that's true to an extent, right? Because one thing about the algorithms that like YouTube use and everything, and every application is different, okay? Let's start there. But they want to show you what they think you're going to like, but they also kind of sprinkle out new information as well. They try new things, they send new things out, see how it lands, and gauge from there. So you're going to see opinions that are different than what you have, for sure. You're going to see content that's outside of your known interest area. You're just not going to see a lot of it.
Studies that investigated what people actually look at online or are shown by search engines found little evidence that you're ideologically isolated. It's the exact opposite. Online, you are constantly confronted with opinions and worldviews that are not your own. It turns out that
It also depends on the app too, right? So there's a huge difference between, let's say, Facebook and YouTube. Okay? Facebook, you're choosing who to interact with. You're choosing who to add to your friend group, whose updates to see. And a lot of people have friends lists that are hundreds, if not thousands long. And they see those updates. And those updates of family members that, might hold differing views, or work colleagues. LinkedIn is another really good example. You're going to see things from your coworkers, from your bosses, from people that are posting things they shouldn't post on LinkedIn, but they do anyway. And you're going to get bombarded with that more on like a platform like a LinkedIn or a Facebook than on a YouTube, where you're going to be tailored more to your liking. Also, a lot of places where people go for chat rooms and stuff like that, or forums, etc., those are a little less targeted as well.
the place where you are the most confronted with opinions and worldviews that are not your own. It turns out that the place where you are the most ideologically isolated is your real life, in the real world, with real people. Your real-world interactions with your friends, family, colleagues, and neighbors are much less diverse than your online bubble.
100%
The filter bubble
agree.
exists in your real life, not online. Okay, wait. Online filter bubbles have been the prevailing explanation as to why we've all started hating each other more over the last 2 decades.
I don't think that's true. We don't hate each other more. I think it's just become more prevalent. It's shown the spotlight on it. It's made that hatred or those disagreements, I wouldn't necessarily use the word hatred, although in some cases that may be true, but it's made that more open and faster. And it's made the critique of opposing viewpoints happen instantly and more anonymously behind more protection. A lot of people wouldn't say some of the things that they say online to someone's face. They just simply wouldn't, right? They do that because of the fact that they're behind a computer screen and the person on the other end is dehumanized. They wouldn't say that at a barbecue over beer talking about politics, right? It wouldn't be the case. So it's apples and tomatoes. It's just not the same.
If that's not the case, shouldn't the internet open our minds and make us more empathetic with each other? Unfortunately, your brain is stupid. Your
Yes,
brain
it is.
stupid. Human brains didn't evolve to understand the true nature of reality, but to navigate and maintain social structures. Our ancestors desperately needed each other to survive, so our brains had to make sure we cooperated.
Ooga.
That's why social isolation or exclusion feels so
right.
horrible, because it was actually life-threatening. A tribe that worked together survived. A divided tribe died.
Mm-hmm.
The way communities worked for thousands of years
And that's
is that,
evolution.
sure, you may have disliked a neighbor, but because you lived close to each other, you also rooted for the same sports club or saw them at church. You both thought that the people from the other village were idiots. Being physically close made you familiar and created similarities that bridge the gap of different worldviews so you didn't murder each other.
There's a lot of reasons why we don't murder each other, but yes, of course. The other thing, too, is humanity from an evolutionary standpoint and a societal standpoint. A societal evolutionary standpoint. There we go. Humanity's next best move would ideally be getting that sense of community on a global scale. We're humanity. We're humans. One group. Boom. I don't know how that could happen, though. I really, truthfully don't. It's going to have to be a forced adaptation, because the way we are now, I think that evolution has pretty much halted in any meaningful way, at least on a global scale. I'd say that statement's not entirely true, but for the sake of this conversation, I'm gonna leave that. We try not to let people die off anymore, right? We don't just say, "Oh, you're weak and you had a birth defect and too bad, good luck, goodbye." We don't do that. That's inhumane. And genes continue to circulate through the gene pool that normally might not have. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we've evolved past the point of having to rely on those types of things to survive. Now, you can be a person who was born with no legs and thrive in today's society. That's totally fine. You can contribute to society. So from a societal viewpoint, and this is going to sound a little heartless, but back in the caveman days, a person born with no legs would be a huge drain on the tribe, because the tribe, would probably have to do everything for them. They would have to hunt and provide the food and protect that individual. And that would be seen as probably a huge threat to the tribe, and that person probably wouldn't survive. Nowadays, if someone's born without legs, we do everything we can to save them and to make their quality of life better, because we don't have those same restrictions. We realize that person's valuable and they can contribute. They could be an amazing scientist and come up with the next energy breakthrough. You never know, right? There's no difference societally to having that person there or not necessarily. And it's a wonderful thing, because now we can really take advantage of what's important, which is the human brain. We're at that point where we can do that, and that's a wonderful thing.
And your worldview was probably not that different in the first place, because it was formed by the same local culture.
Good point.
When our brains evolved, this was enough. Whoever was around was similar to us. We liked what was similar to us. This kept us aligned enough to work together despite our differences. As humanity moved on from small tribes to towns and cities, from chiefdoms to kingdoms to nations, our brains and our communities had to adapt to more diverse sets of neighbors.
Yep.
We began to meet on the town square or in universities, where we argued and screamed at each other. But in the grand scheme of things, communities were still relatively isolated, we were still pretty similar and aligned with the people around us. Conflict and disagreement are not a bad thing per se. Tension over how we should live can create new and wonderful things.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. Conflict and disagreement is not a bad thing. It's a very good thing. That's how humanity pushes forward. Is we disagree, we challenge things, we question things. That's why we are where we are today. It's very important. But it's the manner in which we do so too. Having a verbal debate is a lot different than having a fight to the death. Just a lot different, right?
Our values, norms, and taboos are always evolving, and whatever we think is normal today will not be normal in the future. But we also need social glue to hold our societies together, because our brains don't care about the meta level of humanity, but about being safe in a tribe. Until about 20 years ago, we did something truly new that hit our brains like a freight train. The social media internet, the digital town square. Don't you dare disagree with me. social sorting.
Right?
In a nutshell, our brains are not able to process the amount of disagreement we encounter on the social internet. The very mechanisms that made it possible for our ancestors to work together in the first place are derailed in ways we were not prepared for. Whether you want it to or not, your brain sorts people by worldviews and opinions into teams. This is not simply tribalism, it goes further.
Yeah. So that's one thing that we have to make sure that we're considering, is the fact that there's what we do consciously and what we do subconsciously. And I completely agree with this too, that a lot of these groupings and a lot of these us and them stuff, it happens at a subconscious level. So even if you're consciously really, really trying not to do that, subconsciously you probably are, at least a little bit.
Researchers have called this process social sorting. On the digital town square, you encounter people that express opinions or share information that clash with your worldview. But unlike your neighbor, they don't root for your local sports club. You're missing the local social glue your brain needs to align with them. For your brain, the disagreement between yourself and them becomes a central part of their identity. And this makes it less likely that you will seriously consider their position or opinion in the future. If you hear bad things about them, your brain is much more likely to believe it uncritically. On the flip side, there are people who share your worldview and are maybe even more similar to you than many people in your real life.
It's so true, because being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, situationally or just emotionally, but being able to truly put yourself in someone's shoes and think about it without any type of prejudice, without any type of judgment, it's a very difficult thing to do. A lot of people struggle with that. And I don't know that anyone can actually fully do it, because you're not in the situation. You're just seeing yourself in it. And I think some of us can be quite good at it, but I think we all, to some extent, do a little bit of that, where we do a little bit of judgment on it, right? And it's very hard.
Which makes your brain like them a lot and kind of hyper-align with them. People who think like you are probably good people because you're a good person and whatever social group you belong to is good. So your brain is more likely to believe their opinions. If you hear bad things about them, your brain is much more likely to dismiss it uncritically. The engagement-driven social internet makes it worse because it wants to keep you online as long as possible. And the most engaging emotion is, unfortunately, anger.
It's so
The
true.
more angry you get, the
Well, anger or horniness. I mean, I'm just saying, there's a reason why porn sites are so popular, right? Just the bodies are wired in a certain way chemically, and I'd venture to guess that anger might not be the most. It might be the second most.
the more likely you are to share and engage. And this leads to
I'm a
social
realist,
media
man.
amplifying the most extreme and controversial opinions. It optimizes not only to show us disagreement, but the worst disagreement possible. And because your stupid brain is sorting...
Well, yeah, absolutely. Social media. Even traditional news, it's ratings based, right? You don't get good ratings. You don't get people engaged by showing them the firefighter who saved a cat out of the tree, right? That's not going to get people passionate. It's just simply not. But you're going to get them engaged by showing them some, juicy bit of political thing that's going on, or some conflict. That's going to get people on there, because now there's suddenly differing opinions. There's leaning left, leaning right, right? There's passion to that. There's simply just not passion to reporting on good things.
Putting people into teams, whatever the worst opinions are, it assigns the same opinions to everybody on the other team. What's striking and new about online polarization is that all the aspects of our lives that make us individuals, our lifestyle choices, the comedians or shows we watch, our religion, sense of fashion and so on, are condensed, making it seem that they're parts of opposing and mutually exclusive identities. This simplifies and distorts disagreements about how we should run society so much that it often seems as if the people on the other team are actively, willfully making the world worse.
Yes.
That they're-
Yes. I'm so glad they said that. Also, please forgive my voice because I'm still recovering from being sick. But that's something that I hear a lot and I see a lot is people, assuming that the opposing people are actively trying to just destroy the government or bring about the end of the world or some other, crazy thing. And it's like, well, how about we think about that for just a minute? Why in the world would you think that that's what they're actively trying to do? In your mind, that might be what they're going towards. But why would you take it that step further to think that what they're actively do? If you think about that rationally for just a minute, you realize that that can't possibly be the case, right? It can't possibly actually be the case. Anyway, I think that's really interesting because it's very true. That's so prevalent.
Almost evil, beyond convincing with rationality, facts, or civil discussion. While you are, of course...
That's probably where a lot of, you hear the terms devil worshippers, Satanists, they worship the devil, other derogatory terms that I won't repeat right now, especially when you're doing political talk that get thrown about. And that's probably why, right? Because in their mind, that's what they are. And of course, you apply rationalism to that. Calm down for a second, breathe deep, really think about it. And that's probably not the case.
Course on the correct team, it may be hard to process that you may seem like that to people on the other team. On a societal level, this is dissolving the social glue that's the foundation of our democracies. If we think our neighbors are evil, how can we live together?
Yep.
This is especially bad in the US, where the two-party system makes it extra easy to think of people in terms of teams. Negative opinion about the other party has reached record highs.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, is there something we can learn from this?
It's absolutely insane. It drives me nuts. My God. It's crazy how much people think that the other political affiliation in the U.S. here, where I am, is just the root of all evil. It blows my mind. Absolutely just blows my mind. And our political system, in my opinion, has a lot of faults. We have a lot of great things, but we have a lot of faults. Our system is very open to corruption. It's very open to outside private corporate influence. And a lot of the checks and balances that were written into our Constitution just are a little outdated. They haven't been adopted for a modern world. And we're seeing a lot of challenges to those things right now. And unfortunately, it's going to take an act of Congress, as they say, to fix any of that. And we're so at each other's throats in this country right now that the likelihood of this actually getting solved anytime soon is very low. Our government is just not moving along. It's not getting over this hump of us and them. And it's not putting that aside for the good of the people. It's one thing when the average person does the us and them thing. That's different than when the politicians are living it. They can say it, but when they live it, that's what cripples us. And that's what's happening right now here. So hopefully they can work that out soon.
Is there something we can do? Something more positive? Opinion part. In the end, it's important to be aware of what social media does to your brain. It's easier to change yourself than to change the world. So
Thank you. There's a song, I don't remember who it's by. It might be Michael Jackson, actually, but it's called Man in the Mirror. And musically, it's not one of my favorite songs. It's a decent one, but it's not like, top of the list. But lyrically, I absolutely love the lyrics. If you want to change the world, take a look in the mirror and change yourself is basically what it is. And I think that's what's so important in today's day and age is self-reflection. Take a look at yourself. Get to know yourself. And then once you have a really good understanding of yourself, then you can reflect that onto other people and try and put yourself in their shoes. But you got to know yourself first. You have to objectively know yourself. You have to hate parts of yourself, and you have to be okay with that. You've got to be critical, but openly critical. It has to be objective. It's so important, and so many people don't do that. So many people cannot look at themselves in an objective manner because they might not like what they see. And the truth of the matter is we all suck. We all suck. It's just the truth. We all suck. But you know what? We're worth it. We all suck the same. So the question is just getting to know ourselves and how do we suck? And how do we overcome that to try to not suck as much?
So you can self-examine why you believe the things you believe and whether you dismiss or believe information based on who the person is who is stating that information. The internet comes with a lot of ups and downs, and just like we had to adapt from living in small tribes to living in cities, we need to adapt to the information age where we have access to billions of people.
It's going to be hard,
Evolution
man.
is too slow.
We can do it.
So we need to find models that work with what our brains are able to tolerate. One model that seemed to work well was the pre-social media internet old people might remember. Bulletin boards, forums,
Oh no. Blogs. Oh no, I just got called old people by Kurzgesagt. I like you guys less now. Oh my God, I got called old. I guess I am kind of old, but I remember those days. What the heck?
The main difference to today was twofold. For one, there were no algorithms fighting to keep you online at any cost. At some point, you were done with the internet for the day, as mind-blowing as this may sound. But more importantly,
it just doesn't happen now.
Was very fractured, split into thousands of different communities, like small villages gathering around shared beliefs and interests. These villages were separated from each other by digital rivers or mountains. These communities worked because they mirrored real life much more than social media. Each village had its own culture and set of rules. Maybe one community was into rough humor and soft moderation, another had strict rules and banned easily. If you didn't play by the village rules, you'd be banned. Or you could just go and move to another village that suited you better. So instead of all of us gathering in one place, overwhelming our brains at a town square that in the end just leads us to going insane, one solution to achieve less social sorting may be extremely simple. Go back to smaller online communities. Because what our stupid brains don't realize is that we are actually all on the same team. Humanity, on a wet rock speeding through space in a universe that doesn't think about us. We are all in this together. But until our brains adjust to being able to deal with that, we might be better off being a tiny bit separated.
Yeah, that's true, I guess. But I also think that this problem will solve itself. Or maybe not solve itself, but we will solve this problem. The biggest question is, how long is that going to take? I personally think it's probably going to be a few generations before we tackle this one. I honestly do. It's sort of like when we talked about evolution. We will adapt to it. Humans are really good at adapting. That's sort of one of our biggest things, right? So we can adapt and overcome. We will figure it out. Oh, well.
One of the worst things about the media we could...
That works. I absolutely loved this video. As always, can't think of a bad video from Kurzgesagt, so I had a lot to say on this one. Sorry if it was a bit lengthy, especially with me still recovering from being sickness, or from being sick rather. Lots of pauses, lots of monotone talking, so sorry about that, guys, but thanks for bearing with me if you made it this far. I really appreciate you, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.